Hello, Jake here, head setter at Yonder and Hang. Today I'm here with Hannah and we're going to take you through the 8 levels of climbing difficulty. Really positive, juggy handholds, quite a prescribed hand sequence. In the next difficulty level, we can challenge the climber by finger strength and complexity.
With rock climbing's meteoric rise from niche pursuit to mainstream Olympic sport, it's no longer only lycra-cladded devotees debating what separates the difficulty in one bouldering move from another. But now a broad audience of recreational sports fans, curious friends and family, and just about anyone who's seen free solo, who find themselves asking how difficult is that climb? And show surprise that the technical finger-intensive move you spent years training for is somehow harder than the overhanging jug ladder that you posted on Instagram when you first started climbing. You see, rock climbing has a unique problem. We do have several difficulty grading systems, including the American V scale from VB to V17, and the French scale from 3 to 9A, but no concrete explanation of exactly what it is that separates V3 from V5. We're about to examine exactly how the people responsible for grading climbs decide the level of each boulder problem, and separate climbing into 8 different levels of difficulty.
First level of difficulty, what are we calling it?
Entry level.
Entry level. Okay.
So entry level, I guess to me, would be if you walk into any bouldering gym, the easiest boulders in the gym that you might be able to expect, generally speaking, someone that maybe doesn't have any climbing experience or very little climbing experience could expect to get to the top of.
That's pretty much our aim. So at Yonder we have a circuit of yellows. We give all of the yellows VB, and yeah, like you said, the aim is to make sure everyone who comes in off the street is able to climb it.
What are the hallmarks of a VB climb?
VB's almost always, pretty much always, really positive juggy handholds, really big, positive, comfy feet, small moves, and not complicated in any way. Pretty much like a ladder.
Okay. Moving on to our next level of difficulty, we've got Novice, which you ascribed what grades?
Yeah, for the purposes of this video, we're going to say Novice is V0 to V1, something in that territory.
Okay, so what would it be about if you've got a climb that you cannot make any easier? What's the next step up to make a climb not VB, Novice?
So the first thing I like to introduce into V0, VB, really obvious things you can add in, like a hand sequence, like a cross move, or maybe you can give them an undercut. There are like infinite ways to make a VB into a V0 or V1, but the obvious ones are introducing a hand sequence, making the handholds less positive, making the footholds less good, making the moves larger. Yeah, let's just talk about this white blobby. I think we gave it V1 on the top out. You'll see there's halfway up the boulders are like a big move. So to counteract the size of the move, I've given them a really large foot to push off. There you go. So we climbed V0 and we climbed VB, and they're kind of casual, you know, they're down pulling. The moves between the holds are quite small, and the handholds and footholds themselves are both big, positive, comfy. This V1, for example, big, comfy handholds, but there's some tech in there, you know, there's a side pull, there's a roll move, there's an undercut. V1 is sort of that level where you can start introducing a bit of sequence, a bit of rolling, a bit of undercut. This one is a V2, so a slight step up from V1. The moves between holds, again, they're kind of short moves, but the handholds are starting to get worse now. So we have some slopers and we have undercuts. Slopers and undercuts, cool combination. You have to start understanding what to do now. It's actually more of a Gaston. Oh, and a smear. Yeah. Just a bit more going on. So we're talking about beginner now.
Which we're saying is V2 to V3?
Something like 2 to 3. I think at this level you can really start introducing new techniques to challenge the climber. In this instance, we have crack. Crack is kind of like Marmite, isn't it? You either love it or hate it. If you can do it, it's easy. If you can't do it, it's hard. A good introduction of a new technique. Can you hand jam?
It seems to me that a lot of what makes a boulder feel difficult can be down to what your personal style is.
Totally. Yeah.
So even though I, generally speaking, across a lot of different styles of boulder at V2 would feel quite comfortable, I might not feel so comfortable on a crack boulder, but that doesn't mean that it's not a V2, it just means that it's a V2 that's not in my style.
For sure. And if you can climb crack, if you're like kind of okay at crack climbing, that is the easiest possible crack boulder you could set.
What immediately becomes apparent in introducing new climbing techniques in the beginner bracket is the challenge that comes with identifying the difficulty of a climb, given our individual technique preferences. Unlike many artistic sports where the difficulty of a skill can be set and recorded in a neat handbook, climbing is a form with infinite possibilities. A boulder might involve a hand jam, a rock over, a small pocket, or a campus move, or any combination of these, and what feels easy for me might feel hard for you. Unlike a triple backflip in gymnastics or a kickflip in skateboarding, no two climbs are ever created the same move might never appear again. So how might we reference the difficulty of one climb against another? I asked Jake how Routesetters identify and categorise the difficulty of so many different and unique types of climbing move.
There is no official guideline to say this is a V1 because so-and-so, this is a V2 because so-and-so. It's just based on past experience and feel, how much exertion you're using, and then sometimes you get like a beginner climber to test the boulder, and if they can do it and you know the level, you can say for sure we'll give this V2. We're kind of working from past experience to grade all these boulders. Usually we set with a team of 3 or 4 people who have been climbing for 10 years each, so there's like often 40 years worth of experience, climbed indoors and outdoors, and that's usually a fairly reliable way of agreeing upon a difficulty level.
And with that in mind, we turned our attention to the hallmarks of a steep V3 boulder problem, and how one particular move like a heel hook could be transformed to level up in difficulty.
Oh yeah, this is probably V3. And it's got a heel hook on it. This is probably a harder heel hook. Lots of things going on here. Slightly longer boulder, much steeper than we've seen. So to counteract it being steep, there are very positive juggy handholds in there. There's quite a prescribed hand sequence, lots of like rolls, crossing moves, and there's a heel hook. So this is the harder heel hook, smaller heel. You can't just plonk it on. You have to think like where your hand is positioned, heel to hand, extra complicated. And then there are some pockets. Pockets is something we've not spoken about yet.
Pockets are Marmite as well, right?
Pockets, like Marmite, are a bit of a love-hate affair for many climbers, which is why I wanted to ask Jake his opinion on this controversial hold type. It's just the question didn't quite formulate fully in my mind before I started to ask it.
Pockets. Question.
In that pink we've used pockets, which is like, should we use pockets of V2, V3? No, it's probably V3. Pockets are a really good way of prescribing a sequence for a start, because it's really hard to match a pocket. And the other thing, it's like an introduction to strength. Like you have to have a certain amount of strength to put 2 or only 3 or only 2 fingers in a hold. Really simple way of doing it. You can also do it with small crimps, you can do it with slopers, but pockets are another good way of introducing that strength element. Yeah, this is a really cool boulder. So we're moving on to intermediate, something like V4 to 5 for this video. This blue boulder, you have no feet to start off with. However, the starting hold is like kind of positive. It's a campus, sort of an exercise in whether you can do a pull-up. And by V4, V5, we can start challenging people on this skill. You're campusing from a good hold to 2 other good holds.
The kind of like the difficulty here is in the strength requirement.
For sure.
for the pull-up and the initial.
For sure, yeah.
And then with a boulder like this, would you kind of like offset, if the difficulty is in that first move, might you offset the rest of the climb to make it really centered on that first move?
Well, we want to try and set consistent difficulty throughout the boulder, but in this case what we've done is you've had your power aspect and the rest of the boulder isn't very complicated, it's just kind of physical still. So overall it's just physical, you don't have to do too much thinking. And as the difficulty ramps up, we would ask the climber to do 2 or 3 things at the same time. So, you know, you're going off worse holds, and maybe instead of going from down pulling hold to another down pulling hold, you have to go down pulling to like a shoulder or down pulling to like an undercut. It's just a combination of different skills and different quality handholds.
For many years, indoor bouldering has subscribed to the same grading system, but recent developments have been shaking things up in the climbing world and might be signalling the end of climbing grading as we know it. A magnesium carbonate compound named mag dust has been shaking things up in the climbing community and suggesting that indoor bouldering might not be as difficult as we once believed. And many climbers are unsure how to respond to the changes.
And at first we didn't know what it was, and then I spoke to my friend Kevin and we realised there's only one thing that's changed. It's the chalk.
Maybe about 2 weeks ago, my friend put me on to mag dust, and at the time he did warn me about how it might affect my climbing, but I didn't really pay much attention until I started climbing with it, and then I really realised just how strong the effect is.
This it says V3, but not with this stuff. It's V1 now.
If you would like to try some Rungne for yourself, reports suggest that you can get 15% off your next order using code Hannah15. A magnesium carbonate compound known as mag dust.
This one we can talk about size of handhold. So this is a super thin boulder. By thin I mean crimping. None of these holds are thicker than maybe 3 centimeters from the wall, so you're starting to rely on finger strength now. The complexity is not very high, but we're challenging the climber purely by finger strength. So another intermediate-ish level boulder. This one I think hits the V4, V5 mark quite well. Another way of introducing difficulty is dynamic movement. So that first move is like a super popular right now, slab, stand-up sort of thing. And then it's not super obvious what you're supposed to do for the rest of the boulder. There's a large orange hold, just looks like a foothold to most people. You're actually supposed to palm on it, as you can see. Yeah. There's a small crimp in there, there's a weird side pull. You really have to start thinking about how to move now. And that's sort of combined with finger strength and dynamic ability. There's a lot going on in this boulder.
Yeah, and then you've got like the next iteration of the heel hook again,
exactly,
like at the top, where that heel hook to me looks quite, it doesn't look super difficult, but it's very off balance, like you're leaning quite far to the side.
Quite a tenuous heel hook. It's quite thin, and you have to place it quite precisely. And even if you place it quite well, you can go over to try and match and it still might pop out.
When I was thinking about what it is that gives a boulder its grade, I was thinking one of the ways you could categorize it, and I've seen this sometimes done in comps, is by how many of the climbing population could climb that boulder.
Yeah.
So for example, with VBs, we talked about anyone could walk in off the street, generally speaking, and climb that boulder. Whereas as you're getting into kind of like the advanced, are we in advanced level? As you get closer towards advanced level, you might expect that the percentage of climbers that climb in that gym that would be able to climb that boulder would be a lot less. Yeah. And then as we move towards like the hardest boulders in the world, only a handful of people are able to climb those boulders, have climbed those boulders before. Is how often a boulder is climbed part of what gives it its difficulty, if that makes any sense at all?
Yeah, I think it's a good way of measuring it. Indoors we don't have the luxury of a consensus over like 25 years. We have 6 weeks. That's all we have. So for sure that is a good measure, but it only works outside.
Okay. So now
Was
we're
that
into...
in deep enough question.
I think so, no,
deep
that
enough
makes
answer for you.
sense.
Like
Yeah.
we could tally the number of people that climb each boulder in the building over 6 weeks, but it would be kind of a pointless exercise. Yeah, we'll talk about the next level, advanced. What are we talking now? We've given it
6 to something.
We've given it roughly V6 to V8.
Cool. So what's going on with this boulder?
Crimps, really thin crimps, and actually quite large moves between them. You can see the foothold is good to counteract the fact that the handholds are bad. There's always a bit of a balance there. This boulder is actually relatively basic, but now it's like a true test of finger strength and can you move between these awful holds.
Sure. And all the holds in this boulder are like the same hold.
They're they're all really similar, yeah.
Repeated.
Yeah.
I guess in indoor bouldering maybe not, but is endurance, like the ability to hold on to the same hold over and over, would that be something that would factor in when you're resetting?
Certainly a consideration. I mean, generally the longer the boulder, the harder the boulder. This boulder is probably like, what was it, 8 moves long or something? So it's not much of a consideration here, but certainly if we have a cave, some of the boulders in there are like 16 moves long. So at some point you have to consider how that affects the grades.
Yeah.
Like once you go over like 9 moves in a cave, you can start adding a number here and there. I just wanted to talk a little bit about another way to add difficulty, endurance, more moves, harder boulder essentially. So in the cave, I'm not going to do any climbing because it's super dark in here, but like this white that goes across me is probably 16 moves long, but it's all handlebars, it's all like super big jugs, so we've given it a V2.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And if it was half the length,
if it was
maybe it would be
half the length, it might be like V0. And that like endurance thing is consistent throughout all the climbs in the cave. Like this black again is probably over 10 moves long, you know? It's really complicated. I think we gave it a V7, but if it was just to here, out there, you know, it would be like V5. But then you have to add all these moves. Cave climbing, eh? We have another heel hook to talk about. So we've got a combination of a heel hook and sort of a dead point to a left hand crimp. And you see that left hand crimp is slotted, so you have to know how to heel hook, and you have to be able to control the speed of your movement using your heel because the edge is slotted.
Sure. And then you've got the combination of dual texture and blocked.
Yeah.
In the advanced bracket, I challenged Jake to talk us through a complete change of styles. Firstly on a jump boulder problem that Yonder had created on their dedicated competition wall, and then a delicate slab without many handholds at all.
So this boulder we've put it in the advanced bracket. I think that's probably fair. So this move, just so while we're here on this boulder, this move is a lache or a lambada, really popular at the moment.
Yes.
This one in particular is relatively difficult. You can't land and stop just on that first black macro. You have to keep moving to the third black macro. So there's like a position of security at the start, and then there's a position of security at the third black macro, and massive insecurity in the middle. So it's super challenging, totally warranting that advanced level. Talk about that black slab, I think.
Ah, okay. So this is a similar move to the orange that we looked at a few climbs ago.
Yeah.
What sets this aside? Why is this more difficult? It looks like to the layman, it's the same move.
Yeah, well spotted. It is really similar. That angle of wall is actually much steeper, and the handhold and both feet are significantly worse. So although it looks the same, it's a totally different challenge. Three like V grades harder, You have a section of no hands.
Ooh, okay.
You also had a section of no hands on the orange boulder we saw before. By this, at this point in your climbing life, your climbing career, you have to start thinking about what shoes you're wearing.
So, pockets.
Yeah, so here we have another advanced boulder. It's a good example of forcing a sequence and harking back to that blue, there's a campus section. So the old campus 180 move, we've pulled it out of the bag this time. It's a prescribed sequence because you have pockets and it's combined with campusing. Unfortunately, I couldn't do the top for some reason, so advanced.
Sure, because you've got that kind of like compounding of all of the different elements that can make a boulder harder stacked on top of one another.
Yeah, and
it's difficult.
Essentially that's the theme. You'll start to see certain things like complexity and strength, all these things stacking up until you have a harder thing.
We're moving on to expert, aren't we?
We're moving on to expert. So this is probably, we've given this V9 to V12. So black's like maybe V10, maybe harder. The sloper to the slot, super hard move. Not sure if anyone's done it yet.
Wow.
I need a session on it, I need a proper session. Maybe I'll
You've
just
got 4.5 minutes.
I'll
How's
just
that?
do the next bit. Is that all the battery life you got?
No, it's...
I'm curious to know why, what is it that makes this one of the hardest? What combination of all of the things we've talked about has this got that gives it its difficulty?
It's got the whole collection. It's got incredible complexity, it's got awful handholds, and it's got, in this case it has a large move. Large move is not the only way to make things hard, but it does. And it's simply the combination of those three things that makes it hard.
And then
so we have a toe hook that's kind of hard to put in to start off with. That allows you to do a actually not very big move to a very, very poor sloper. And then you have to flick, so you have a precision move to a slot. And then after that, you have even more complexity. So the first two moves alone, incredibly hard. I don't know if anyone's done this boulder yet. It's really hard to put your body in the right position if you're underpowered for the boulder. If you're strong enough, then you can move with decisiveness, and you have more of a chance of doing the boulder quickly. But me, I'm like unfit at the minute, so I couldn't do it. Probably the hardest boulder we have in Yonder at the moment is this blue. It's got like a combination of things. Awful holds, really hard moves, and it's super long. It's probably 15 moves coming out of the cave. It's quite a hot spot for really hard boulders because you can come out of the cave and then go into the head wall. Sometimes we tag the boulders halfway, so maybe the top section is just V9 and then you add in the start, it could be V11, something like that.
Those boulders that are right at the top end, do you have to be on an overhang to get that level of difficulty? No, you can set incredibly hard on slab and vert. I'd be a bit concerned giving a number. Okay.
Like maybe you can set V8 on slab, V9 on slab.
Yeah.
But it has to be really specific. It's easier to set hard on a steep overhang. So now we'll talk about the elite level. We've given this V13 to V16. There are no boulders here graded V13 to V16. We could try. We would have to get someone in who is elite to set them, because only really those people know what that grade feels like. With this elite level, we've reached the point where we're not really able to test those people at that V13, V16 bracket. The people that are climbing those boulders, maybe they'll train on a board like that. Or they'll train on a board like this, but we can't test them. As setters, it's super hard. And then those boulders outside, they're a collection of everything we've already talked about. So handhold size, quality of hold, is it really slopey, size of move, how perfect you have to be with your toe placement or your heel placement, how much attention to detail you give to the amount of rubber that's worn on your toe. Maybe this shoe is no good for that particular move. It's just infinite. And this is why our sport is so fantastic. Like, the difficulty level is so incredibly infinite, and the style level, they're just infinite styles. It's so cool. I don't know what more to say on that.
So I guess elite level boulders, we can't really give an example because they, generally speaking, don't really exist in the indoor gym, because only such a tiny percentage of climbers will climb them. What's also super cool is that limit is being pushed
very cool
more and more into our kind of, I guess, our last category, our nod to the god tier difficulty in climbing, which would be boulders so difficult that only, is it 6? 6?
I don't know how many V17s there are in the world. I think it's 5 or 6 now, for sure. But how many people have climbed V17? Like 8 people maybe? Not very many. And it's so far beyond the realms of what we can all climb. Like, it's incredibly hard to even discuss it. But all you need to know as the viewer, V17 is currently the hardest grade, 9A, French 9A. We'll probably see a V18 in our lifetime, but I don't think it's going to be for 5 years. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Is there a takeaway? What's the takeaway? There are 8 levels.
Yeah.
Those were our 8 levels that we.
This was our
interpretation
of that challenge, and I think we've kind of said throughout what's really cool about climbing is that, and climbing grading, is that it is so subjective. I really feel like it's that subjectivity that makes this conversation potentially endless, but we are gonna stop it there. So thanks very much for joining me.
Great job, guys. V0 my gym. Don't forget, come to Hang, check out Boba. I don't even know what channel this is.
Make sure you give Bouldering Boba a follow. Thanks to Jake for his time today.
Pleasure.
Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next video.
Bye.